This week's parsha is actually a double parsha, Behar, Bechukatai. So we'll discuss a little bit about Parshas Behar. So the Torah tells us, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Behar Sinai Lemor. And God commanded Moses on Har Sinai, saying, Daber b'nei Yisrael v'amarta le'am ki savo el haaretz. When you enter the land of Israel, asher nino saying lachem v'shavsa haaretz Shabbos l'Hashem, you're going to have the land of Eretz Yisrael rest. Sheishanim tizra sadecha, 6 years you work the field and prune v'asafta tuasa. V'ashana hashri Shabbat Shabbason yiyeh, and the 7th year will be a sabbatical, which is known as Shemitta. So the Torah in Parashas Behar introduces the mitzvah of Shemitta that we're familiar with now since we have the Eretz Yisrael, and we know every 7th year there's a Shemitah. Of course, there's a discussion among the Rambam and the Gaonim when exactly is the Shemitah year, because how do you count Shemitah? Do you do is it 749 and Yovel's the 50th year, and then you go back to year 1? Or no, is Yovel and Shemitah, is it both 49? So there's a discussion in the Rishonim, the Rambam and Gaonim, how do you count? So in fact, it's a famous shiloh, what someone asked to the Beis HaLevi, we shouldn't have to keep Shemitah today. We shouldn't have to keep Shemitah Bizman Hazeh. Well, how come? Because Shemitah, we paskin, is only rabbinical today. And we have a doubt which year it is. Maybe it's this year, maybe it's next year. Every year you do it, it's a suffix. So therefore, suffix Rabbanan L'Kula. A doubt regarding a rabbinic law we're lenient on. So therefore he asked the Beis HaLevi, we shouldn't have to keep Shemitah Bizman Hazeh. So the Beis HaLevi said, no, you don't understand the principle of Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula. You're not familiar with the famous Ran in Arvei Psachim. The Ran has a similar question. The Gemara talks about reclining on the 4 cups of wine. So the Gemara has a discussion, I think within the name of Rav Nachman, do you recline on the first 2 cups or the last 2 cups? So it's a different opinion. They come out of the shir. Some students said Rav Nachman said the first 2 cups. Others said he said the last 2 cups. At least they agreed that he said you have to recline on 2 out of the 4. So the Gemara says, since we don't know, ID v'ID b'yaseba, we recline on all 4, and that's our practice. Comes along the Ran and says, what are you talking about? Daled Kosos is only D'Rabbanan. Reclining is only D'Rabbanan. We have a principle, Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula. A doubt regarding a rabbinic law we're lenient on. So therefore, you shouldn't have to recline on any of the 4 cups. Why is the Gemara Bachmir, we recline on all 4? You shouldn't have to recline on any, because I come to the first 2 cups, Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula. The last 2 cups, Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula. So that's the Ran's kasha. So the Ran answers, we don't say Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula when it's going to lead you to the wrong result. In other words, everyone agrees you have to recline on 2 out of 4 cups. So if I apply the principle of Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula, I'll end up not reclining on any. So in the case we are using the principle Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula is going to lead you to an erroneous result, so obviously you don't apply the principle. Same thing here. Everyone agrees Shemitah is one of these years. So if I apply Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula, I'll end up not keeping Shemitah at all, which is definitely wrong. Hence, we keep Shemitah, and the minhag is to follow whichever Shita we follow, but we do follow Shemitah. Even though Shemitah is D'Rabbanan today, we don't apply the principle of Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula, and we keep Shemitah, even Bizman Hazeh. So that's what the Torah introduces in Parashas Behar, the mitzvah of Shemitah. And the question is, what does the Torah say? The Torah says, Behar Sinai Lemor. It says the Torah was given, it says God spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, on Har Sinai. So there's a famous question in general. We know the Torah was given at Har Sinai, and the mitzvahs were given at Har Sinai. Why Har Sinai? Well, why was Har Sinai picked as the mountain to give the Torah? Why not Mount Everest? Why not pick a big mountain? So the Medrash says because it's one of the lowest mountains around, and therefore to be successful in Torah, you have to humble yourself and lower yourself, like Moshe. Ki Moshe Anav Miod, the Moshe was the biggest Anav, and he was it's Torah's Moshe. So he gave us on a lower mountain, the small mountain, to teach us Anivas. But however, it comes along the Mefarshim and said, if that's true, so I can do better. Why pick a mountain at all? Let's pick a nice valley, find a nice low, whatever you say about a mountain, it's still above ground level. Let's go below ground level. Let's pick a nice valley, dig a hole, give it there. If you want Anivas, let's get down. So what does it mean that it was given on Har Sinai? Because it wanted to teach you Anivas. Let's find a low place and really teach you Anivas. So we have to understand what Anivas means, being humble. So there's a famous Rambam in Shmona Prakim. The Rambam talks about the golden path, the golden rule. You know, the golden years, there's the golden path, and that is following a straight road, the middle path. All extremes are bad. You always have to take the middle approach. And, of course, everyone thinks they're in the middle anyway, whoever you speak to. But either because you always can find someone more extreme and someone more liberal, so I guess you're in the middle somewhere. But the Rambam's talking about midos anyway. He's talking about characteristic trait. You know, all extremes are bad. So he gives an example. He says that the only time extremes are good, or they're necessary, is when you have a sickness. So, for example, the Rambam gives, if you have a reed bent all the way to the left, and you want it to come back to the middle, so if you bend the reed back to the middle, what's going to happen? Eventually it's going to go back to the left again. You got to bend it all the way to the right, so then it will come back to the middle. So normally all the moderation, the middle road is the correct way, but sometimes when you have a sickness, you have to take extreme measures. Or for instance, let's say someone's sick and they take antibiotic and they get better. So you're going to say, you know what, well, this person felt terrible, he had the flu, he was sick, and he took antibiotic and he got better. I'm feeling great. Imagine if I take antibiotics, how good I would feel. You might not feel too good, because antibiotics is makeup, you have a deficiency in your body or something, and the antibiotics is filling it up, making up what you're missing. But if you're not lacking in it, so that medicine's not going to be good for you. So the only time you go extremes, if you have a sickness, you have to take medicine. But if not, you take the middle path. And in fact, there were two schools in Europe. In fact, there were many schools in Europe, but two famous schools. There was the school of the Navardic Yeshiva and the Slobodka. And they had two totally different approaches. The approach was to do Avodas Hashem, to serve God, but they had two different ways of doing it. So one preached Gadlus HaAdam, Slobodka. They preached how great you are. The point was to build you up. So how could you speak those terrible words? You're a mouth that speaks to God. You daven. You have a Tzelem Elokim. How could you do such things? You're so good. You're so powerful. And and they build you up so you shouldn't act that way. And they felt a person should dress properly, etc. And Navardic was the opposite extreme. For instance, let's say a person comes to Seder starts 9 o'clock, they come 9:05, and then they learn for the next 12 hours. What, 9:05? They'll go, not you're 5 minutes late, how could you? You're never going to grow. In other words, they're just going to focus on the negative. Again, to try to get you to grow, but they were shiftless adam. There's no ani, there's no for me. That's narcissism. That's the world today. They have a field day today, Navardik. But it's also bittul yourself, nullify. It's all about you're never good enough. If you gave $1,000 to tzedakah, you should be giving $1,500. Which is true. You can always do more, but they push you to the extreme. In fact, that's part of the discussions among the Bali Musar about Musar in general. Some proponents of Musar don't like it because they think it gets a person depressed. That if you're constantly, so it all depends what you mean by Musar. As I said, the different schools of thought, but those that are always putting you down, they feel it's very depressing. Of course, there was the middle school, Kelm, that combined both Navardik and Sabatical. And of course, the truth is, we all need both. We need a little dose of Navardik sometimes, and sometimes we need a dose of Sabatical. The problem is, most people don't take the right medicine at the right time. When a person's feeling great about himself, a little haughty, he's not going to want to hear how he can improve. So he's going to, he wants to hear more Sabatical, how great I am. And the person who's down and depressed, they don't want to hear how good. They want to hear how terrible they are, how I'm miserable, I'm a nothing. The challenge in life is taking the right medicine at the right time. It's all about balance. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the Adam Mikol Adam, but Moshe knew, he didn't think he was like the water carriers. Moshe Rabbeinu knew he was great. The only difference was, he said, I had the opportunity. If anyone else would have been given the opportunity I was given, they could even be better than me. I realize right now I'm up here and people are down there. He wasn't, that's not a nivas nullifying. You have to know the reality. He wasn't a fool. Moses was a very bright, a very intelligent man. He was our leader. And he knew, but his anivas was not that he thought he was like a nobody, but he said it was nothing to do with me. It's all from God, if anyone in my situation. So life's all about balance, and that's what they're coming to teach you. Behar Sinai, you can't be too high, but you don't want to be down in the valley either, getting Navardic medicine all day. You might end up staying down there. And that's a lesson in life in general. You always have to have balance. You need perspective in the big picture. And that's what it's coming to tell me. Har Sinai, low mountain, but not some valley, because you need for every person needs balance in their life. And that's why it's on a mountain, a low mountain, and not a valley. So, getting back, the famous Kasha Rashi quotes, so it says God gave the mitzvah of Shemitah on Har Sinai. So the famous question is, Ma inyan Shemitah eitzel Har Sinai? What is the connection with the mitzvah of Shemitah and Har Sinai? Weren't all the mitzvahs given at Har Sinai? The Aseres HaDibros, the Lucha, everything was given at Har Sinai. So it's like you discovered America here, maybe Canada, I don't know. Like you say, you know what? I have a tremendous announcement to make. Shemitah was given at Mount Sinai. Kiyasha Kochacha. Very good. We already know that. What is the Torah telling me here that the mitzvah of Shemitah was given at Har Sinai? Like it's telling me I got something I don't know. We already know that. So Rashi already quotes, and others, there's a whole discussion about, it's a machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael, how the Torah was given. Was just the general rules given at Har Sinai and the details given later? Well, no, both the kolam and pratim, the general rules and the particular, were all given at one time. So that's what Rashi writes here. Just like by Shemitah, the kolam and the pratim, the general rules and the particular rules were given at Har Sinai, so too all mitzvahs. So we're using Shemitah to teach me about all mitzvahs. So Hada Kasha Ladukta, back to the original question then. Why do I need Shemitah to learn it out? Why not pick Shabbos? Why not pick kosher? We could go through a whole list. It doesn't answer the Kasha. Ma'in in Shemitah, it's good. So you're telling me that this is like all the general rules and particular rules. So, okay, but it doesn't answer, begs the question, why was Shemitah singled out? To learn. Why was Shemitah used as a vehicle to learn out this principle that both the general and the particular rules were given Har Sinai? So we'll give a couple of suggestions. Number one, we'll begin with the Chasam Sofer. The Chasam Sofer says, we know there are different types of mitzvahs. There are different categories. There are chukim, chok, that we don't understand. God said to do it, that's it. There's mishpatim, more rules, more justice rules, we understand them, societal rules. And there's edus, mitzvahs that have testimony, tefillin, Shabbos. And the truth is, every mitzvah probably has a little of all three, but it has one focus. Like it has a major focus, but it doesn't mean it excludes the other ones. So the Chasam Sofer points out, we know Jews are very skeptical people at best. So imagine, a king coming along and saying, you know what, I want you now to work the land 6 years, and the 7th year, I want you to leave a fellow. You know what, I'm going to give you a blessing. You're going to have food before and after. You get double the food. How many people would actually take him up on that offer, believe it? And secondly, let's say you went through with it. Many people died afterwards, you had no famine. You think the next 7 years they're going to do it again? Of course not. So what the Chasam Sofer is saying is, no human being can give a mitzvah like this. No human being can give a mitzvah Shemitah, guaranteed you're going to have double the food the next time. Obviously, it's the Melech Malchei HaMoachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's only a God in heaven who can give that. And therefore, Shemitah, what does Shemitah signify? A mitzvah, it signifies that Torah is min hashamayim. That Torah is, we can discuss, thou shalt not murder, this and that, but Shemitah, who else can give a mitzvah Shemitah except God? So that's what it means. Mine is Shemitah outside Sinai, that this, like, why do we use Shemitah as the example? This, like Shemitah, is obvious that it's a Torah min hashamayim, so to all the mitzvahs are Torah min hashamayim. In fact, that's what Rav Hirsch says, number 10, on Aseret HaDibros. There's a 10th commandment, lo sachmo, not to covet someone else's field, wife, etc. So there's many people ask, there's a famous kasha, I understand God can tell me not to steal, not to murder, or He can tell me anything, but how can He tell me to regulate my emotions? But not to covet? I can't help it. I'm the desire, I won't take it. So there are many answers. We've given a whole share on that topic. But Rav Hirsch points out, what do we see from that? Is another proof Torah min hashamayim. What king can give a meaningless rule? Imagine the Prime Minister gets up and he says, you are no longer allowed to think about X, Y, Z. Okay, very good. What kind of ridiculous rule? You don't know what I'm thinking, so what kind of rule is that? The fact that Torah is telling me go sachmod is telling me, obviously, by built-in implication, it's only someone who reads your mind and knows. It might be a difficult mitzvah to do anyway, or to hold back from, but as our first point, the clear implication is only a God can give a commandment like that. No human being is dumb enough to give a commandment like that. That's a useless rule. They'll laugh at him. So that's what Shemitah. Mine is Shemitah Itahal Sinai. Shemitah reveals to us about all mitzvahs. This, like Shemitah, had to be min hashamayim because no human being could have done that. So too the other 612 mitzvahs are also Torah min hashamayim. That's the Chasam Sofer. Rav Nissen Alper had a different explanation. He points out that we know Shemitah happens every 7 years. And we know certain mitzvahs we have 3 times a day, we have daily, weekly, and we know we're creatures of habit. And a lot of times after you do things for a while, they become, you don't really think about them, you just go through the motions. So, what is Shemitah is an example? Shemitah is a mitzvah that comes once every 7 years. The farmers might not be too happy about it, but it comes every 7 years. So, the excitement, if you do one, like we had last year, maybe 2 years ago, we had the Birkas Hachama once every 19 years. went down to the water, daven vasikin. It's a very exciting moment. Or you do things once in a while, even once in a year is exciting. That's how we make a shachiyanu on things that come once in a while. So once every 7 years is a long time. So the excitement that someone has by doing a mitzvah once in 7 years, Shemitah, so too that same excitement you have for Shemitah, we want you to take that excitement and keep it for every day, for the Ashrei, for the Shema. It's easier said than done, but that's what the Torah is telling me. I want you to keep all mitzvahs like Shemitah. Just the tremendous excitement of Shemitah once every 7 years, so too the daily, putting on tefillin every morning, davening. I want you to feel like the mitzvah. Of course, one has to work on that, and it's easier said than done. But that's the concept. We have to feel each day is kechadasha. Each day, that's my bracha I always give. I go over to a bar mitzvah boy when they're putting on that tefillin for the first time. I tell them my bracha to you is the same excitement you felt today putting on the tefillin. That's the excitement you should have every day of your life putting on tefillin. And that's what the message of Shemitah is all about, that we have to try to feel, it's not easy, you have to work on it, but that's what you have to, that's why the Torah, that's why they put Shemitah by Har Sinai, that we should do all mitzvahs just like we perform Har Sinai. It's like we fulfill Shemitah. And another explanation is, in the Hasidic Sfarim they bring, Shemitah is probably one of the most distant mitzvahs from the Jews at Har Sinai. In many ways, what they mean to say is like this: when the Jews entered Eretz Yisrael, first they had 40 years in the Midbar. They didn't start keeping the laws right away. Truma Maisa. It took them the first 14 years. Sheva Shekivshu v'Sheva Shechulka. 7 years they conquered. 7 years they split up. Mm-hmm. And then the fourth year, 15, they started keeping the mitzvahs hatuyas varet. So Shemitah was at the 7th year. So Shemitah is the furthest mitzvah away at this time. Number one, in time, physically, and also in practice. They're in the midbar. It's a desert. There's nothing like. How distant is this? That they're telling me. The Torah is telling me in Har Sinai about Shemitah. It's the longest mitzvah, and it's something so far away. And the message is that Torah is timeless. No matter how irrelevant you might think Shemitah is now, Shemitah is going to be very relevant at the appropriate time. And any mitzvah, it's irrelevant all the time. Sometimes you might not see the relevance of a mitzvah or not, but the mitzvah Shemitah is telling me that God gave us Shemitah Har Sinai. This how distant Shemitah was then. And nevertheless, the Jews were Nasev and Nishma. They accepted it with love. So too we have to view all mitzvahs, even some mitzvahs that we find more difficult to understand or to do. We have to realize, we go back to Shemitah and see it was the hardest mitzvah, the longest time away, and who can even imagine that you're going to be able to work? In fact, that's the end of Parshas Bechukatai in this week's parsha as well. That the Torah tells us in the Tochacha, I will make the land desolate, the land of Eretz Yisrael. And the Ramban writes that this is really a blessing, not a curse. In other words, because we all know in 1948, or I should say before the year 1948, the British were over, and they tried everything. They brought in the best scientists. They tried to get the land to do something. The land did nothing. It was desolate. And it was a big swampland. See, like Jersey, they compare Israel to Jersey inside. I guess Jersey's still a swampland, but Israel. So imagine, you think in 1948, if they were able to build up the land, they would have gave it back to the Jews. Of course not. That's what the Ramban writes, that the bracha is only the Jews were able to build the land of Eretz Yisrael. In fact, I'm sure you're wondering, paying $1 a liter and being surrounded by all the Arab nations that have all the oil, God couldn't sink a little oil into Israel? Why don't we have any oil in Israel? So some point out Yishmael, Yesham oil. It's already an illusion that the Arabs are going to get the oil. But they point out that no, that's exactly why. Imagine if Israel was sitting on oil. You think the British would have gave it back? The point was it had to be. That was a tremendous bracha. Only the Jewish people could build up. And tremendous what they're doing now. Every year you go back, it's a tremendous bracha. As they point out, they say the Indians sold Manhattan Island for how much? What is this?
Bag of tea.
They say $24. So people, so this parenthetically, in the financial books they say, they don't make fun of the Indians. They say if the Indians took that $24 and put it into a mutual fund and got 10% a year, they'd have a lot of money now. But putting that aside, if the Indians knew what Manhattan was going to look like now, would they sell it for $24, $240, $2,500, $2 million? Of course not. Same thing, that's Eretz Yisrael. If people knew what Eretz Yisrael was going to be, of course they know. That's why God left to the swampland for malaria until the Jews came in, and they have to build it up. And that's what Shemitah signifies. It was the furthest thing from the mind to show the Torah is timeless. And one last answer. So the Or HaChaim HaKodesh. The Or HaChaim HaKodesh writes that why does the Torah connect Shemitah with Har Sinai? Because one of the conditions for us getting back and keeping Eretz Yisrael is the Jews keep Har Sinai. One of the conditions of getting Eretz Yisrael is we have to observe the mitzvahs. And that's what the Or HaChaim writes, that he points out, there's a Gemara in Shabbos. The Gemara in Shabbos, Peiches, famous Gemara, it says the Jewish people, Vayisatzu v'tachtis Behar, they were sitting under the mound, and God said, if you accept the Torah, good, if not, here will be a burial. So they accepted the Torah under duress. So the Gemara says, so it's not binding. So the Gemara says, you're right, but during Purim, Nasa v'Nishma, during Purim time, they re-accepted the Torah b'Ava. So the question is, the Torah wasn't binding. So therefore, Purim time it became binding. So the kasha is, but in between Har Sinai and Purim, it wasn't binding. So how could the Jews be punished? Because it says the Jews were thrown. It says the Jews were thrown out of Eretz Yisrael because they didn't keep the laws of Shemitah. So the answer is, it's not a punishment, but what the Or HaChaim is saying is, it's totally on Sinai. For us to keep the Eretz Yisrael, it's only because it was the mitzvah Shemitah was given Har Sinai that we have to keep the mitzvahs. If we don't keep the mitzvahs, it's not a punishment. The Torah wasn't binding, but it's a consequence. If you don't keep the mitzvahs, you're going to get thrown out of Eretz Yisrael. You see how many Yordim there are today. And in the land, it says the land spits them out. Spits out the people. It's a double-edged sword. It's a tremendous privilege to live in Eretz Yisrael, but it's a tremendous responsibility. Just like being a Kohen. Tremendous privilege. You get the first Aliyah, you do Birkas Kohanim, you do the benching, but you also have restrictions, Tumas Meis, who you can marry. So too Eretz Yisrael. Tremendous privilege, but if you're going to sin in the king's palace, that's a lot worse than doing it in his backyard. So therefore, that's what we have to keep in mind, and that the Ma'in in Shemitah Eitel Sinai, the Or HaChaim writes, it's because of what Sinai that keeps Eretz Yisrael. And just along those lines, that's what Chazal tell us, that when God made the peace, the treaty with the bris with Avram, so he said, "B'schus karbanos, you're going to keep Eretz Yisrael." So Avram didn't fall for it. He said, okay, that's good when the Beis HaMikdash is up. But what about when there is no Beis HaMikdash? So what are we going to do to be? So he says, Amiras karbanos. That's davening in the morning, saying karbanos. If you're a big Zionist, you'll be saying karbanos every morning, because Chazal tell us, b'schus karbanos, we're going to keep Eretz Yisrael. So let's summarize. We pointed out Har Sinai. Why Har Sinai? Why not Mount Everest? Because Har Sinai is a low mountain. You want low, let's go to a valley. No, we need a balance in life. Nabardik, Slabatka, the Rambam, the middle path. And everything needs a balance, and you need a perspective. Then we pointed out, why is Shemitah used as an example to teach us that the general and particular rules were given at Har Sinai? So we had different approaches. The Chasam Sofer, that is like Shemitah obviously had to be given from God in heaven, so too all mitzvahs were given, Torah is given from heaven. Second approach was from Rav Alper, just like Shemitah, the excitement of doing a mitzvah every 7 years, that's the excitement we have to keep with us all the time. The third approach was it's timeless. Just like Shemitah made no sense to the Jews at Har Sinai. It's the furthest mitzvah away and it's in a midbar. Nevertheless, you have to realize that Torah always applies. And lastly, the Orach Chaim HaKodesh, that Shemitah is given, we were thrown out of the land for not keeping Shemitah, because Shemitah is dependent on Sinai, on us, on us keeping the mitzvahs.